I was standing at the stove stirring red beans and rice when his hand came out of nowhere and slammed me into the fridge. My cheek burned, my ears rang, and I tasted blood while my daughter sat silently at the table and his son smirked from the couch. He leaned in close and whispered that I was embarrassing him, that I was doing too much. And I just stood there, staring at Layla's honor roll certificate on the fridge door, pretending everything was normal while my hands shook. What he didn't know was I'd already started planning my way out. Friends, before we dive into this story, I want to ask for a small favor. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It means a lot, and it helps this community grow. Now let me tell you exactly how it all unfolded. The red beans had just started to bubble when I laughed. One of those deep laughs that slips out before you can catch it. Layla had said something slick about Jamal's haircut, and I couldn't help myself. My back was to the room, spoon still in my hand, when I felt Marcus behind me. His hand came down fast, hot, and hard across the side of my face, knocking my glasses crooked and sending my elbow into the wall. My temple hit the refrigerator, and for a second, all I could hear was the hum of the freezer and my own pulse pounding in my ears. "You think that's funny? Embarrassing me in front of my son?" he spat, his breath sour with beer and self-importance. He pressed his hand against my jaw, forcing my face toward the living room. "Look at him. You think that's funny to him?" Jamal didn't even flinch. He kept clicking away on his controller like nothing was happening. And God help me, I didn't scream. I didn't push. I just stared at the little green magnet on the fridge that held Layla's honor roll certificate, and I tried not to let the tears fall. My cheek burned like it had been set on fire, but I didn't touch it. I went back to the stove like I'd just dropped something, stirred the beans, checked the rice. My hand was trembling so bad I almost spilled the pot. The whole left side of my face was throbbing. I focused on every little task, sprinkling salt, turning down the burner, grabbing plates. I could feel his eyes on me for a minute, like he was waiting to see if I'd react. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I called Jamal to set the table, my voice low, even. He sighed like I'd asked him to build a damn house. Layla came out of her room slowly, her eyes flicking from my face to Marcus and back again. She didn't say anything, just grabbed the forks. I could see her breathing deep like she'd practiced in therapy. In and out. In and out. I wanted to scream, to yank her into my arms and run out the door, but instead I scooped beans into bowls and smiled like my face wasn't on fire. I said, "Dinner's ready," like it was any other Wednesday. We sat down in silence except for the clink of spoons and Marcus chewing too loud. I didn't taste a thing. My tongue felt too big in my mouth, and every bite scraped the back of my throat. Jamal went on about some new game coming out, and Marcus nodded like a proud dad. Like 5 minutes earlier, he hadn't slammed me against an appliance. I kept my eyes on Layla. She didn't eat much, just pushed her food around. When she finally looked at me, her lips barely moved, but I read it clear. "Are you okay?" I lied with my smile. "I'm fine," I said out loud a moment later, when Marcus asked why I was so quiet. Lie number 1. Then, when Layla touched my arm gently and said she'd help clean up, I said, "I'm just tired." Lie number 2. The third lie came when Marcus kissed the top of my head and said, "You know I didn't mean it." I laughed softly and said, "I know." But I didn't know, and I didn't believe it. The thing is, I used to think there were lines, that if something got bad enough, you'd leave, that there was a limit, a moment that would finally be the one. But that's not how it works. The line moves. It gets blurrier each time. First it was shouting, then holes in the wall. Then the way he yanked Layla's backpack once and said she should watch that mouth. I told myself it was just stress, money, work, parenting. But tonight, when my head hit the fridge and I tasted blood and didn't cry out, that was new. That wasn't just a line. That was something else. I sat through dinner like a ghost, watching this version of my life play out in front of me, thinking, is this it? Is this really it? I couldn't stop picturing that stupid green magnet holding up Layla's certificate. Like even in all this mess, she'd managed to shine. And here I was, serving food to a man who wanted to dim her light, and mine too. When dinner was over, Marcus went to the couch, flipped on the game, and acted like the king of some castle built on silence. Jamal followed him, cracking jokes and calling Layla too sensitive when she refused to laugh. I stood at the sink with the water running, pretending to wash dishes just so I could have noise in my ears. My hands were wet and shaking. I couldn't get the grease off the plates because I wasn't really trying. Layla stood beside me, drying dishes without saying a word. Her shoulder bumped mine, and she gave me the smallest nod. That one gesture undid me. I turned off the water and just stood there, holding a soapy plate like it was the only thing anchoring me. My daughter knew. She saw. And I had to decide whether I was going to keep lying to both of us or start telling the truth, even if it tore everything apart. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at my face. The swelling wasn't too bad. I pressed a cold washcloth to my cheek and watched the skin puff up under it. I thought about taking pictures, proof, evidence. I didn't. I just stood there, exhausted, wondering how I had gotten here. I used to be so sure of who I was, Dana, the hardworking mama, the fixer, the strong one. But in that mirror, I saw a woman who had just let herself be hit and then served dinner like it was normal. I hated her in that moment. Not because she was weak, but because she was pretending to her daughter, pretending to herself. I dried my face and turned off the light, crawled into bed next to the man who did this. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay there counting the seconds between his snores and made a quiet promise. I would never again let Layla think this is what love looks like. Something shifted in me that night. Not a full break, but a crack. And sometimes all it takes is a crack to let something new in. I leaned over the bathroom sink, squinting under that harsh yellow light, trying to blend the concealer into my skin just right. The bruise on my jaw was deeper today, angrier. I had to press harder with the sponge, but every touch sent a jolt through my face. My hand paused a second, and I stared at my reflection. Not at the bruise exactly, but at the woman underneath it. I didn't even recognize my own expression anymore. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Before I could say anything, Layla slipped in, moving like she didn't want to wake something dangerous. She didn't speak at first, just closed the door quietly behind her and stood there, hands tucked into the sleeves of her hoodie. I caught her eyes in the mirror. She was staring straight at my jaw. Her face was blank, but I could see the storm in her eyes, like she was trying to keep something from breaking loose. I went back to dabbing, pretending this was normal, pretending everything was fine. But she didn't move. She just kept watching me like I was unraveling right in front of her. When she finally stepped closer, her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom." I kept my eyes on the mirror, my hand still moving. She reached out slowly and turned my face toward her. I froze. The warmth of her fingers was too much. I almost pulled away, but I didn't. I let her look. Her thumb brushed just under the bruise. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just said, "I heard everything." And when her voice cracked on that last word, something inside me cracked too. My stomach twisted, and I couldn't hold her gaze. I looked down at the sink, blinking hard. She whispered again. I was awake. I heard it all. My mouth opened, but no words came. What could I even say? That it wasn't what it sounded like? That it was just stress? That he didn't mean it? She would see straight through all of it. I taught her to think for herself, and now here she was, using that voice to look right through my silence. She sat down on the edge of the tub, folding her arms tight around herself. I don't like when he looks at me like that. I turned slowly, the concealer still in my hand, my heart thudding. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't look at me. "Sometimes he just stands in my doorway," she said. "He doesn't say anything, just stands there, watching. It's weird." My skin went cold. She went on, still not looking at me. "Jamal says I'm weak, that I flinch too much, that I act like a scared little girl. My jaw tightened. Not just from pain this time, but from rage. Layla finally looked at me. "I don't feel safe, Mom." 5 words. Quiet, plain words, but they hit harder than any slap Marcus ever threw. I sat down next to her on the toilet lid, careful not to bump her. I couldn't speak. My mouth felt sewn shut. She leaned her shoulder into mine like she needed to feel my body right there beside her, like proof that I was still her mother and not just some broken thing in a robe. The guilt came so fast, it knocked the breath out of me. I'd spent so much time hiding the bruises, avoiding questions, covering it all up with jokes and routines. But what had I really done? I'd been patching the surface while my daughter was learning how to live in fear. I thought I was protecting her by staying calm, staying quiet, keeping the peace. But peace had left our house a long time ago. And now here she was, 15 years old, telling me with her whole body that she was scared in her own home. What kind of mother lets that happen? I stared at the tiled floor, every thought crashing into the next. Had she told anyone else? How long had she been holding this? Did she think I wouldn't believe her? Or worse, did she think I didn't care? She reached over and picked up the concealer from the counter, turned it in her hand, then looked at me. "You don't have to cover it up for me," she said. And I don't know why, but that made the tears spill out. I didn't sob, didn't wail. Just let the tears fall in silence while I stared at my girl, at her strength, her clarity. She was giving me something I hadn't had in a long time, a mirror that showed the truth, not the version I painted over every day. I took the concealer from her and set it down on the sink. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my robe, not caring that the makeup smeared. She watched me the whole time, like she needed to see if I would keep pretending or not. I didn't. I just took a deep breath and wrapped my arm around her shoulder, pulling her close. We sat there like that for a while, the two of us pressed together on that little toilet lid, surrounded by fluorescent light and silence. I held her tighter than I had in weeks, maybe months. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I could feel how tense her body still was. I wanted to promise her everything would change, that she'd never feel afraid in her own home again, but I couldn't say it yet. Not until I meant it, not until I had a plan. So I just stayed there with her, letting her know with my presence that I saw her, that I believed her, that I wasn't going to ignore her fear like I had ignored mine for so long. Something shifted in me in that moment. Not just a mother's guilt, but something deeper. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about what kind of example I was setting, what kind of love I was modeling, and whether my daughter would grow up thinking this was all she was worth. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't. The couch cushion dipped under me like it always does in that one corner, the old brown fabric rough on my legs through my thin pajama pants. The TV was on low, some preacher yelling about forgiveness and God's grace like he was trying to break through someone's guilt. I couldn't even hear the words clearly, just the rhythm of his voice, up and down like waves against my thoughts. My phone sat in my palm, screen lit up, half a message typed to Trina. He hit me again. I stared at it, read it over and over, then backspaced all of it, then typed it again, then backspaced it again. My thumbs hovered, trembling. The hallway was dark except for the light spilling out of the TV, and I could hear Marcus snoring deep from the bedroom, his body stretched out across the whole bed like a man with no worries. I thought about how Mama used to say, "What happens in this house stays in this house," like that was some kind of rule passed down in our blood. And maybe it was. Maybe the silence was the real legacy. We all heard Daddy break things when he drank, and none of us ever said a word. My finger hovered over the send button, but something felt wrong about putting it in writing. Like once it existed in text, it would live forever. Too real, too official. So I erased it one last time and hit the call button instead. The phone rang twice before Trina answered, voice thick with sleep. "Hello?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat tightened. I almost hung up. But then the words burst out in a rush. About Marcus, the fridge, the way he grabbed my face, about Layla's voice trembling when she said she didn't feel safe. I talked so fast, I wasn't even sure I was making sense. Trina didn't interrupt. She just went quiet. So quiet I thought maybe she was falling asleep again. But then she said, real low and sharp, "Dana, this is not normal. You know that, right?" Her voice cut through all my defenses. I went straight into excuses. He's stressed. It was just a bad night. He's a good provider. Jamal needs him. Each word tasted worse than the last. She didn't argue, just let me talk. But my own voice sounded thin, like even I didn't believe what I was saying. I looked down at the carpet, the same old brown one we'd had since we moved in, with that weird spot near the edge where bleach took the color out. I stared at that patch while Trina's silence stretched on. Finally, she said, "I'm gonna text you the number for a lawyer I know. She works with women." Quietly. No pressure, okay? Just talk to her. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. My hand gripped the phone so tight it hurt. "You don't have to live like this," she added, and I almost laughed. Because that's the thing, right? You never think you're living like this until someone says it out loud. I told her I'd think about it, that I wasn't sure yet, that I'd call her tomorrow. Another half-truth. I wasn't sure of anything except that the pit in my stomach felt like it was getting deeper by the second. When we hung up, I didn't move, just sat there, staring into the glow of the TV, the preacher still going on about redemption, while my mind raced ahead into places I wasn't ready to go. I leaned forward and buried my face in my hands. My palms still smelled like dish soap from earlier. That little detail stuck with me. How even in all this chaos, I was still washing dishes, still making dinner, still going through the motions like a woman with control. But I wasn't in control. Not anymore. Maybe I never really was. I thought about Jamal, the way he looked at me now with that same judgmental squint Marcus wore. I thought about how Layla started locking her door at night. I thought about the money Marcus controlled, the house that wasn't really mine, and how many times I had said, "It'll pass," just to keep things from boiling over. But the truth was, things had already boiled over. They'd been spilling out little by little for years, and I'd just been mopping it up, hoping no one else would notice the mess. But now Layla noticed. Trina noticed. Hell, even I was starting to admit it. That night, the couch felt smaller, the silence in the room thicker, like the walls had finally gotten tired of holding in all my secrets. I picked up my phone again and stared at the blank screen, waiting for Trina's message to come through. My body felt heavy, like someone had draped a wet blanket over my shoulders. I thought about deleting the call log, about wiping the whole conversation like it never happened. But I didn't. I let the screen light stay on, waiting. There was no putting the lid back on now. I'd opened something I couldn't close, and even though that terrified me, it also felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. I got up slowly, legs stiff, and turned off the TV. The preacher's voice cut out mid-sentence. The sudden quiet made my ears ring. I padded down the hall in the dark, my feet sinking into the old carpet, the floor creaking under me. I peeked into Layla's room. She was curled up tight under her blanket, her face calm. I whispered, "I'm sorry," even though she couldn't hear me. Maybe especially because she couldn't. Then I walked into my bedroom and slipped under the sheets next to the man who had bruised me, and I didn't sleep a damn second. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. The lawyer's number, just like Trina promised. A name, a contact, and the words, "She can help you, Dana. Please call her." My finger hovered again, but I didn't dial. Not yet, just saved it. One small step. My heart raced like I'd just run a mile. Marcus shifted beside me, mumbling something in his sleep, then settled again. I stared into the dark, my breath shallow, listening for any sign he might wake. I wasn't ready for confrontation. I wasn't ready to leave. But something in me had changed. Just a crack, but enough. Enough to let the truth in. Enough to finally ask for help, even if my voice still shook. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew the silence in this house had lost its power. I had spoken. And that secret, the one I carried like some cursed family treasure, didn't belong to just me anymore. Trina knew now, and that meant the truth was out in the world, whether I was ready or not. I sat at the old desktop computer tucked into the corner of our bedroom, the one with the sticky space bar and the dust-coated monitor. The screen glowed a soft blue, lighting up Marcus's framed Employee of the Month plaque hanging just above it, tilted slightly like it didn't even want to look at me. I typed in the login for the savings account, same as always. My fingers were slow. I wasn't even sure why I was checking it. Habit, maybe. Just a random thought before bed. But the second the page loaded, my stomach twisted. The balance was almost gone. Not low, not dipped. Gone. My first thought was that I messed up, typed the wrong password, maybe clicked into the wrong account. I blinked, leaned in. But there it was, clear as day. Layla and Jamal Future. That was the label I'd picked years ago when I opened it. I clicked on the statement history, heart pounding, hands going cold. Transaction after transaction, all withdrawals and debits to a casino up north. The same one. Over and over, slot machines, drinks, cash advances. My vision blurred as I scrolled. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body locked up in the chair while my brain ran wild, dragging me through every memory tied to that money. The morning shifts I picked up when I was already dead tired. The extra clients I cleaned for on weekends while Layla stayed home, helping Jamal with homework. The birthdays I scaled back. The vacations I canceled. The excuses I made for why we need to save, baby. I thought I was building something solid for our kids, something they could count on. College, trade school, or even just a cushion for starting out. I'd imagined handing Layla that money someday, telling her, "It's not much, but it's yours. You earned it too." Now it was just gone, flushed away by Marcus and his endless need for control and comfort while the rest of us scraped and compromised. I stared at the screen until the bank logged me out automatically for inactivity. Insufficient. That word stared back at me in bold gray letters. Not just my account balance. Me. That's how I felt. Like no matter what I did, it was never enough. I wanted to scream. Wake Marcus up and drag him in here to see what he'd done. I wanted to hurl the monitor through the window. I gripped the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles popped. I even stood up halfway before my knees buckled under me, and I sat back down with a thud. What was I supposed to say to him? What lie would he use this time? That he was going to win it all back? That it was just a rough patch? That I should have trusted him to manage things? I already knew the script. I'd heard pieces of it before, in arguments he had with his ex, with his mama, with the credit card companies. I'd always told myself that was before me, that I brought stability, made him better. But the truth was sitting in front of me now, in rows of lost dollars and ruined dreams. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice he made over and over, and he used my sacrifices to fund it. The deeper pain wasn't just the money. It was what the money meant. It was hope. It was proof that I was doing something right in the middle of all this mess, and he took that from me without a second thought. No warning, no apology, just emptied it like it was his to spend. I rubbed my temples, the start of a headache blooming behind my eyes. I thought about Layla's face when she talked about not feeling safe, about Jamal, who would never believe his dad could do any wrong, about how many times I'd kept quiet, tried to keep the peace, told myself I had control. But this showed me just how little power I really had left in this house. If he could take something so personal, so sacred, and destroy it like that, what else would he take? What else had he already taken? The fear hit me in a different way. Not just the kind that comes from a raised hand or a slammed door. This was deeper. A fear that the life I thought I was building was already gone. I shut the computer down with shaking fingers and sat in the dark for a long time. The hum of the monitor faded, and all I could hear was the old ceiling fan rattling overhead and Marcus snoring from down the hall, deep and smug. That sound used to comfort me, meant he was asleep, and I had a moment of peace. But now it made my skin crawl. He was snoring through everything he'd wrecked. I stared into the dark, thinking of the woman I used to be, the one who believed in planning ahead, in keeping a tidy spreadsheet, in the power of hard work. That woman felt so far away. I had put trust in a man who would gamble away our children's future while sleeping soundly under my roof. I wasn't just angry, I was done. Not in some big dramatic way. It was quieter than that. Something in me just shut off, like a breaker flipped. Whatever I had left to give him, trust, benefit of the doubt, forgiveness, it was gone. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff. I walked past our bedroom without looking inside, grabbed a blanket from the hall closet, and curled up on the couch. I didn't want to lie next to him. I couldn't. I clutched the blanket like it could shield me from everything spinning in my chest. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop. I kept seeing Layla's name on that account title. Layla and Jamal Future. Like a promise. Like a contract I made with myself to break the pattern. And now it was just numbers erased on a screen. I knew I couldn't tell them yet. Not like this. But one day, I'd have to. And when I did, I wanted to be able to say that I did something, that I didn't let it slide, that I didn't just let him take and take and take until there was nothing left of me. That night, under the thin blanket with my face turned to the wall, I felt something new. Not hope, not courage exactly, but clarity. A line had been crossed, and this time I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. I stayed behind after choir rehearsal, pretending I had to reorganize the music folders, though I knew no one was buying it. My voice had cracked 3 times during "Great is Thy Faithfulness," and I kept missing my note in the second verse. When the last of the altos drifted out the double doors, their laughter mixing with the sound of car engines starting up outside, I slid onto the back pew and just sat there. The sanctuary was still half lit, the smell of lemon cleaner thick in the air, clinging to the wooden benches and the old hymnals. I pressed my back into the pew, trying to disappear. The overhead lights hummed faintly, and somewhere down the hall, someone was vacuuming. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of the bulletin still in my hand, not reading it, just needing something to do. I didn't expect to hear footsteps behind me, but I recognized the soft shuffle of Sister Angela's flats before I saw her. She slid in next to me without a word and handed me a styrofoam cup of church coffee, too hot and too sweet. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, then tilted her head. "You know I see you, right?" Her voice was so gentle it almost broke me. I tried to smile, to deflect like I always do. I opened my mouth to say something about how I was just tired, or maybe the heat got to me. But nothing came out. Instead, I lowered my eyes. I knew she could see the makeup, too thick, too orange, clinging to the swelling along my jaw. She didn't push, didn't scold, just sipped her coffee and waited. So I talked, quiet at first, then faster. I told her about the bruises, about the night Marcus slammed me against the fridge. About the money, the savings I scraped together that vanished into some damn casino. I told her I was scared to call the police, not just because of Marcus, but because he's a black man in America, and once that system grabs hold of a black man, it doesn't let go. I told her about Jamal, about the weight of being the one to ruin a man's reputation, the shame, the community whispers. I talked until my throat burned, and she just nodded, her hand steady on mine, like she'd heard it all before, and maybe she had. Then she told me about some of the women she'd counseled over the years. Women who smiled in the church kitchen but wore long sleeves in July. Women who sang "He's an on-time God" while praying they'd live through the night. And women she'd buried. That last one hit different. She didn't say it like a threat. She said it like a truth she carried in her bones. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, my heart heavy with fear and guilt. I stared at the cross above the altar, the gold one we polish before Easter every year. "Do you think God will hate me if I leave?" I whispered. I heard the words come out of my mouth and instantly felt stupid. But I had to ask. I needed to say it out loud. She turned to me fully then, her eyes wide, her voice firmer. "No, I think he'd be heartbroken if you stayed. God didn't put you here to be hurt, baby." Something in the way she said it made the room feel warmer. I nodded, but I couldn't quite believe her. Not all the way. I'd spent years wrapping my worth around sacrifice, around holding it together, Around forgiveness. Sister Angela saw the doubt in my face and squeezed my hand tighter. "You are not breaking a vow," she said. "He already did that when he raised his hand to you. You are not the one who failed." My chest clenched. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. All the scriptures about loyalty and obedience and turning the other cheek were burned into me, but no one ever talked about survival. No one ever said what to do when your home becomes a battlefield. She leaned in close and said, "There's no glory in suffering in silence. Don't you dare confuse pain with holiness." That made me close my eyes. Just for a second, I felt seen, not judged, not pitied, seen. I stayed in that pew longer than I should have. We talked in circles, around shame, around the fear of what the church folks would say, around the pressure to make a marriage look good from the outside. She told me about the times she almost left her own husband back in the day. "You don't owe anyone your silence," she said. "Not your kids, not your church, not even your God." Her voice didn't shake. Mine did. I kept thinking about the casserole I brought to Deacon Smith's funeral, how I stood beside Marcus while he made small talk and people smiled at us like we were solid. They didn't see anything. Or maybe they did and just didn't say a word. Either way, the performance was exhausting, and I was tired. I told her I didn't know what to do next. She said, "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just stop pretending, start there." That stuck with me, because pretending had become second nature, like breathing. When we finally stood to leave, the sanctuary was completely empty. The janitor had even turned off the side lights. I walked out with her into the cool night air, the church parking lot quiet, except for the sound of crickets. My car was the only one left. She hugged me tight and didn't say, "Call me if you need anything." She said, "I'll be checking in, so don't lie to me." I managed a laugh. A real one, even if it was short. Driving home, I still felt guilty, still felt scared. But under all that, buried somewhere deep, I also felt something new. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely crazy, and I wasn't completely alone. Marcus might still have the power to scare me, but he didn't have the power to keep me invisible. Not anymore. Someone saw me. Someone believed me. And that tiny shift, that sliver of light, was enough to keep me breathing that night. The diner smelled like old grease and burnt toast, the kind of place where the booths were sticky and the coffee always tasted like the bottom of the pot. I picked a corner seat with a good view of the door and wrapped both hands around the chipped mug, more for comfort than anything else. The heat didn't help. My fingers were cold from nerves. I kept checking my phone, watching the time move slower than it should. The waitress had already asked twice if I wanted anything else. I just smiled and said I was waiting on someone. When the bell over the door finally rang and Detective Harris stepped in, I almost didn't recognize him. He was taller than I remembered, broader too, with a beard now and that kind of walk that lets people know he's not here for small talk. His badge flashed at his hip, and something about seeing it made my chest tighten. This was real now, not just something I was thinking about in the dark. He saw me and smiled, casual. "Danny Coleman," he said like we were back in high school. I tried to smile back, but my lips barely moved. He slid into the booth across from me, setting his phone face down on the table like he meant to stay a while. "You look good," he said, then tilted his head. "But tired." I didn't answer that. I pulled the folder out of my purse and slid it across the table. Bank statements, copies of the transactions, a couple blurry photos of my face from different angles. The bruise on my jaw, the one on my arm. He flipped through them without saying much, just nodding slowly. I watched his eyes change, his smile fade. My stomach turned. "That's my college fund," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "For the kids." He didn't write anything down, just let me keep going. I told him about the fridge, the threats, the yelling. I told him how Marcus liked to whisper awful things after he hit me, like he was marking me with words too. I told him about Layla, how she doesn't sleep through the night anymore. I kept talking, my hands shaking. I couldn't tell if I was shaking from fear or shame or both. He never interrupted, just listened. I braced myself for him to tell me it wasn't enough, that unless I had a video or a witness or something dramatic, There wasn't much he could do. I waited for the doubt, the dismissal, but it didn't come. Instead, he leaned forward and explained, step by step, what an emergency protective order is, what it could do, how quickly things could move if I was willing to sign. He laid it out plain. I'd have to file, go before a judge, and Marcus could be removed from the house immediately. He made it sound like something I could actually do. Still, my chest felt like it was splitting. I pictured Marcus in a cell. I pictured Jamal's face when he found out. I pictured his mama telling everyone I was a bitter, manipulative woman who destroyed her son's life. I heard my own mama's voice in my head. We don't put our men in the system. We fix things in private. Harris must have seen the storm in my face because he reached out and tapped the folder gently. You already did the hard part, Dana. You showed up. I nodded slowly, but my throat was dry. I took a sip of the coffee, even though it had gone cold. I told him I was scared, that Marcus had a way of flipping everything, that he knew how to make people believe him, that I didn't want Layla to grow up thinking her mama destroyed her family. Harris said, she's going to grow up knowing you protected her. That's the difference. That got me. I stared down at the Formica table and tried to breathe through the weight in my chest. I hadn't let myself think of it that way. I'd been stuck between shame and survival so long, I forgot what it meant to be protective. Really protective. Not just silent. I whispered, what if I change my mind after I file? He nodded like he'd heard that 100 times. Then we pause. But you won't be alone, Dana. You're not alone now. I didn't believe him all the way, not yet, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. By the time the check came, neither of us had touched the food we ordered. He picked up the bill without asking, left cash on the table, then handed me a plain white business card. His number was handwritten at the bottom. Anytime, he said, even if it's just to talk something out. I nodded and put it in my purse like it was fragile. We stood up, and I caught our reflection in the diner's front window, me in my wrinkled sweater, him looking like someone who still believed in rules. I wasn't sure I belonged in that reflection, but I stood a little straighter anyway. Outside, the sun had dipped behind the skyline, and the air felt heavier. I leaned against my car for a second before getting in. My legs didn't want to work right. I sat behind the wheel, key in the ignition, and just breathed. Deep, full breaths. Something was shifting, slowly, but it was there. Not a plan yet, but movement. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove home with Harris's words in my head. If you don't do something, this is only going to get worse. I hated how true it felt. I hated that he said it with such certainty. But deep down, I knew he was right. I thought about Layla, her whisper in the bathroom. I thought about the word insufficient flashing on the bank screen. And I thought about the woman I used to be before I stopped recognizing myself. That meeting didn't fix everything. I was still scared, still unsure. But it marked something. A shift. I had taken a step away from the woman who stayed quiet and towards someone else, someone I hadn't fully met yet, but who was starting to speak up. And even if my voice shook, even if I changed my mind a dozen times, I'd still taken that first step. That counted for something. I drove with both hands on the wheel, windows down, wind hitting my face like a reminder I was still here, still alive. And I wasn't done yet. I sat on the floor with my back against the side of the bed, legs crossed and bare, the carpet scratching against my skin. The hallway light seeped in under the door, casting a thin line across the floor that looked like it could cut me. Above me, Marcus snored steady and loud, that deep, chesty kind of sleep that only people without a conscience manage. I held my phone low, the screen dimmed so much I could barely see the letters, thumbs working fast as I texted back and forth with Trina and the lawyer she connected me with. My breathing was shallow, like even that might wake him. Every ping, even when it was set to vibrate, made me freeze. I kept checking his silhouette, watching for any shift in his breathing. He didn't move, didn't stir. Just lay there in my bed like he hadn't emptied our bank account, like he hadn't left bruises on my body or fear in my daughter's voice. My fingers trembled as I typed, trying to hold the camera still enough to send a video I'd recorded weeks ago when he stood in the hallway yelling that if I ever embarrassed him again, I'd regret it. The lawyer responded quick, professional but not cold. She told me what would happen if I filed: emergency protective order, court hearing, Marcus served at home or work, depending on where we wanted to do it. He'd be told to leave the apartment right away. I asked, could he go to jail? She said maybe. Depends on what the judge sees. Depends on how Marcus reacts. Depends on whether I press criminal charges. My stomach turned. I pictured Marcus in handcuffs. I pictured Jamal looking at me like I ruined his life. I pictured Marcus's mother, calling me ungrateful, saying I was tearing the family apart. I could already hear the voices. Why didn't she just pray harder? Why didn't she stay quiet? That shame stuck to me like sweat. I stared at the carpet, at a little stain I never noticed before, probably coffee or chocolate milk from when Layla was little. I reached down and rubbed at it with my thumb, like I could scrub the whole night away if I just tried hard enough. My phone buzzed again. The lawyer asked if I had documentation, photos, text messages, witness statements. I sent everything I had: screenshots of the bank account, the photo of my bruised jaw, a voice memo I recorded by accident once during a fight, where you could hear Marcus breathing hard and saying, "Don't push me, Dana, you know I'll snap." I hated listening to it, but I sent it anyway. The lawyer wrote back, "This is enough to start. If you're ready, we can move fast." I stared at those words a long time. My hands were sweating. My heart raced. I looked at the bed. Marcus was still snoring, sound asleep, completely unaware that I was sitting 10 feet away, planning the beginning of his undoing. I reached up slowly, placed my hand on the edge of the mattress. It was warm under my palm. That used to be comforting. Now it felt like a warning. I pulled my hand back like it burned. Something shifted in my chest. I looked toward the hallway again. Layla's door was cracked open, just a sliver, and her nightlight spilled out that soft glow she's had since she was 6. The light looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed. I could almost hear her whisper from the bathroom again, the way her voice broke. "I don't feel safe." That line kept circling my brain like a hook stuck in a bad song, over and over, louder every time. I thought about how many nights I tucked her in thinking I was doing enough, thinking I was strong just for staying. But staying hadn't kept her safe. Hiding hadn't kept me safe. Silence hadn't stopped anything. I pressed my palm flat on the carpet like I needed to feel something real. The room spun a little. I closed my eyes, took a breath. Then I typed back, "Okay. Let's do it." The lawyer sent a thumbs up and said she'd start the paperwork right away. Then she paused and asked the hardest question. "Are you sure?" I didn't answer right away. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen, heart pounding. I was scared. That part hadn't changed. But something else had started growing in me the moment I heard Layla say those words. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting her, too. I didn't want her to become a woman who swallowed pain just to keep the peace. I didn't want her to learn that love comes with bruises and silence. I glanced at Marcus again, still knocked out, still breathing easy, not knowing the ground was shifting beneath him. I leaned my head back against the mattress and whispered, "Yes," into the empty room, quiet but solid. I didn't know what would happen next, and that terrified me. But for the first time in a long time, the fear didn't paralyze me. It pushed me forward. I slid the phone under my thigh, laid my hand over it, and closed my eyes for just a second. My heart was still racing, but I felt something underneath the fear. Not peace, not yet, but power. By the time I climbed into bed, the hallway light still on, my body felt like it had lived 10 years in one night. I lay stiff on the edge of the mattress, barely breathing, afraid the bed would give away the storm happening inside me. Marcus didn't move. I turned my back to him, eyes open, staring at the wall. I knew the next days would be hard, maybe worse than anything before. He would yell. Jamal would blame me. People would talk. But I wasn't walking blind anymore. I had information. I had a plan. I had people. Trina, the lawyer, Sister Angela. I had proof. I repeated that to myself like a prayer. I have proof. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I slid my hand into the pocket of my robe, feeling the folded paper where I'd written down the lawyer's name and the case number she gave me. Just seeing it, just touching it, gave me a flicker of courage. The real kind. Not the kind where you survive quietly. The kind where you say no more. That night, lying next to the man who still thought he owned my silence, I chose something different. I chose myself. I chose my daughter. And I wasn't going back. The water from the faucet was warm, almost too hot, but I didn't turn it down. I needed something to keep me grounded, something steady. The dishes clinked against each other as I rinsed them, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. Layla was in her room. Jamal had just dropped his plate in the sink without a word of thanks, and I'd told him, calmly but clearly, not to speak to her like she was a maid. That's all I said. Nothing cruel, nothing loud, just a boundary. But Marcus came stomping into the kitchen like I'd insulted his entire bloodline. I didn't even turn around. I could feel the heat of his rage before I saw it. His voice hit first. "You correcting my son in my house now?" I looked at him over my shoulder, jaw tight, heart thudding. The look in his eyes, wild, sharp, no pause, told me this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was punishment. He moved fast. 1 second I was rinsing a plate, the next my back was slammed against the fridge, his fingers digging into my jaw so hard my teeth knocked together. "Don't you ever embarrass me like that again," he hissed. Ever. Time slowed down in a strange way, like I wasn't in my body. I could see everything, crystal clear. Jamal standing in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking just a little, like he approved. Like he was proud to watch his father put me back in place. Layla at the end of the hall, clutching her phone to her chest, eyes wide, barely breathing. I don't know if she was about to call someone or just holding on to it like a safety net. My face burned where he held me, but I didn't close my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't apologize. I didn't even flinch. Something in me had snapped the night before, and now I could feel the crack widening. When he finally let go, I stumbled forward a step, but I caught myself. My hand went to my face, slow, steady. I rubbed the place he'd gripped like I was brushing off dirt. Then I looked at him, really looked at him. And I didn't lower my eyes. I didn't try to fix anything. I just stared straight into his, and for a moment, a real one, he stepped back. Just an inch. But I saw it. He covered it fast, of course. Shook his head, scoffed like I was being dramatic. "Don't start that crying mess," he muttered as he walked away. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't even blinking. I stayed right there in front of the sink, breathing hard, hands clenched. My legs felt like jelly, but there was something holding me up. Like a metal rod had been pushed through my spine, keeping me upright. I could still hear his footsteps as he walked back to the living room and turned on the TV like nothing had happened. Jamal followed him, not saying a word, and I stood alone in the kitchen, my chest rising and falling fast. I didn't need another sign. I didn't need another bruise. He had just handed me the last piece of proof I'd been waiting for, not knowing he was sealing his own fate. I walked to Layla's room and stood at her door. She looked at me with big eyes, like she wanted to ask a million questions. I just said, "Go lay down, baby. I've got it." She nodded, silent, and that was enough. When the house went quiet again, I didn't go to bed right away. I sat at the table first, hands flat on the wood, looking around like I was seeing everything for the first time. The old curtains I kept meaning to replace, the chipped edge on the cabinet, the family photo we took at the church cookout last summer, fake smiles and tight arms. I stared at Marcus's face in that picture, how convincing he looked. A good man. A family man. Nobody would guess what really happened behind closed doors. And that was the scariest part, how easy it was for him to flip the switch, to charm everyone else while choking me in the hallway. I stood up slowly, legs still shaky, and went to the hall closet. I pulled out one of those brown grocery bags with handles and laid it flat on the bed. Then I moved around the room quietly, gathering documents, birth certificates, social security cards, bank statements, insurance. My hands moved fast, but my brain felt slow, like it was trying to protect me from fully feeling everything. Marcus was already snoring by the time I slid under the covers. I faced the wall, not him. My bag was tucked behind the dresser, zipped up and ready. I set my phone on the nightstand, alarm set for early. I didn't close my eyes. I watched the numbers on the clock change minute by minute. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would wake him, but he didn't stir. Just laid there, taking up space like a man who thought he'd won, like he'd reminded me who had the power. But what he didn't see, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that this wasn't fear anymore. It was fire. Something had shifted in me, and it wasn't going back. He thought he broke me, but all he did was confirm that the woman I used to be was gone, and whoever was rising up in her place wasn't going to play quiet anymore. That night, as I listened to his snore rattle through the room, I repeated one thing to myself over and over, like a drumbeat in my chest. Tomorrow, it changes. Not someday. Not when it's safe. Not when I have more money, or after the holidays. Tomorrow. I knew exactly who was coming to that kitchen table in the morning. I knew what they'd bring. I'd seen the paperwork. I'd read the process. I'd said yes. And no matter how much my body trembled, no matter how hard the guilt tried to crawl back in, I didn't feel doubt anymore. The door I had been standing in front of for years was about to swing open. And this time, I wasn't going to stand still. I closed my eyes and whispered again, "Tomorrow, it changes." Then I waited for the sun. The smell of bacon fills the kitchen, curling around my shoulders like a memory I didn't ask for. My hands move steady over the skillet, flipping each strip carefully, even though my fingers are slick with sweat. I reach for the biscuits in the oven, golden and hot, and plate them next to fluffy scrambled eggs and a little bowl of fruit I sliced at 6 in the morning with a knife that shook in my hand. I've set the table with Mama's white dishes, the ones I keep wrapped in newspaper in the top cabinet. Marcus likes to say they're too fancy for every day, but today is not every day. I place his favorite mug at the head of the table, the one that says, "Best Dad Ever," even though I want to smash it. My heart is thudding so loud I can feel it in my throat, but my face is calm, almost blank. I move through the kitchen like I'm hosting brunch, not justice. When Marcus walks in, he's humming some old-school song, grinning like he owns the world. He's wearing cologne, talking about a promotion. His smile stretches wide as he kisses the air near my temple like last night didn't happen. He plops into the chair like a king, loading his plate without hesitation, reaching for the biscuits first. "You went all out," he says between bites, like I made this spread out of love and not as a final act of control. I nod. Nothing more. I don't look him in the eyes. Not yet. Layla slips into her seat like she's walking across a frozen lake. She keeps her head down, counts her breaths, one in, one out, just like her therapist taught her. Her fingers tap the side of her thigh under the table. I slide the last plate in front of her and pull the chair across from Marcus out just a little. It's subtle, almost nothing, but I need the space ready. He doesn't notice. He's too busy complaining about traffic and bragging about how they can't run the hospital without me. Every word he says bounces around the room like a balloon filled with poison. I watch his mouth move and wonder how he can be this sure of himself, how he can chew bacon and talk about overtime while the whole world is about to cave in around him. Then it happens. The knock, sharp, right on time. Not a neighbor, not a delivery. That knock has weight. Marcus freezes with his fork halfway to his mouth. His eyebrows lift like he's surprised, but not worried yet. I wipe my hands on a towel and walk to the door. My fingers tremble, but I unlock it anyway. Open. And there they are. Trina, her arms crossed tight over a folder. The lawyer, holding a clipboard and a thick envelope. Sister Angela, dressed in her Sunday best like this is sacred business. And behind them, 2 uniformed officers, scanning everything. Their eyes flick from me to Marcus. "Morning," one says. I nod and step aside. For half a second, I think about saying it's a mistake, that it's too much, that maybe we should wait. But the moment passes. I step back and let them in. Trina walks past me first, the lawyer behind her. Sister Angela squeezes my hand as she enters. I close the door behind them, and just like that, the kitchen becomes something else. A courtroom. A reckoning. Marcus is standing now, face twisted with confusion. "What's all this?" he asks. He looks at me like I'm supposed to explain, like I owe him something. The lawyer lays out the folder on the table, opens it. Photos, copies of statements, the court order. She says his name, full and formal. Says he's being served. Says he has to leave the premises. One of the officers reads from the paper. His voice is calm but firm. I watch Marcus's face shift from shock to anger to something I've never seen before, fear. Real fear. He starts to protest, says it's a setup, that I'm being dramatic, that I'm letting outsiders into our home. But no one moves. No one backs down. Trina stays standing, eyes hard. The lawyer keeps her hand on the papers. The officers don't flinch. Layla watches from her chair, wide-eyed but silent, and I finally walk over and stand behind her. I place my hand on her shoulder, gentle but steady. She leans into it just a little, just enough. I want her to feel me there, to know I mean it this time. Marcus paces for a second, muttering. Then he laughs like it's a joke, says something about how I'll regret this, how I'm breaking our family, but no one's laughing. One of the officers steps forward, says it again. He has to leave. Marcus looks at me one last time. His face is red, his mouth tight. "You really doing this?" he says. I don't answer. I don't need to. The papers on the table speak for me. The bruises speak for me. The emptiness in my savings account speaks for me. The fear in my daughter's voice speaks for me. I stand there and let the silence carry all the weight I've been holding for years. He grabs his keys and storms out without another word. The front door slams so hard a picture on the wall tilts. No one says anything for a long beat. Then the lawyer starts going over the next steps. Court date. Restrictions. Trina takes notes. Layla stares at the table. I just keep standing there behind her, hand still on her shoulder, holding both of us up. When they finally leave, the apartment is too quiet. No TV blaring. No heavy footsteps. Just the ticking of the wall clock. I start cleaning up the plates. My hands still shake, but I do it anyway. Layla helps without me asking. She doesn't say much, but at one point she wraps her arms around my waist and hugs me tight. I close my eyes and let myself feel it. I don't know what comes next. I don't know what Marcus will do, what Jamal will say, what people at church will whisper. But I know this. The man who thought he owned my silence is gone, and I'm still here. My home feels different now. Not peaceful yet, but possible. Like maybe I can rebuild from this wreckage. Like maybe the pieces, scattered and cracked as they are, might finally belong to me. I rinse the last plate and place it gently in the rack. The water runs clear, and for the first time in a long time, I breathe deep. The key sticks a little when I try to turn it, the cheap metal grinding against the inside of the lock, but after a second, it clicks. I push the door open and step into the new apartment. The air smells faintly like dust and lemon cleaner. Not bad, just unused. The carpet is older, a little musty, with faint outlines where furniture once stood. The living room has a single sagging couch someone from Trina's church donated, and our 2 suitcases sit in the corner like guests waiting for permission to stay. Layla's laugh bounces down the hall as she opens and closes doors, calling out, "This one's mine!" with a kind of joy I haven't heard in her voice for months. I stand in the doorway a second longer, hand still on the knob, the ring of new keys cutting into my palm. They're light, flimsy things from the hardware store, but they feel heavier than anything I've ever held. This space is quiet in a way that isn't scary. No heavy footsteps above me. No door hinges squealing just before a fight. Just silence. Honest silence. I shut the door slowly behind me and take a breath that finally feels like mine. I leave our things piled in the corner and start opening windows. The air outside is warm and smells like cut grass and car exhaust, but I don't care. I want it inside. I want the old air gone. I don't even realize I'm crying until I lean against the windowsill and feel the wet on my cheeks. It's not loud sobbing, just tears that roll without asking. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I wipe my face and check it. 3 messages in a row. Marcus's sister. You should be ashamed. Jamal. You broke this family. And Trina, God bless her, sending me heart emojis and a picture of a $25 coffee table she found on Facebook Marketplace. I stare at Jamal's message the longest. My thumbs hover. I want to say I tried, or he left bruises, or ask your sister what she saw. But I don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I tuck the phone away and walk into the kitchen, where we've got 2 chipped mugs and a few borrowed dishes in an empty cabinet. I open a drawer just to hear it squeak. Even that feels like proof I'm somewhere new. Later, I drive Layla to her therapy session. The office is quiet, soft lighting, peaceful music playing low. But something in me is buzzing the whole time. I sit in the chair next to her instead of staying in the waiting room. The therapist looks surprised, but doesn't ask why. I just start talking. Not about Marcus, at least not at first. About my own father. About how Mama used to keep the kitchen spotless so he wouldn't find something to yell about. About the things we didn't say. About the way silence became a second language in our house. Layla reaches over and holds my hand while I talk, and that does it. The tears come again, harder this time. Messier. I talk through them anyway. I say, out loud, the things I've kept buried since I was younger than Layla. And the more I say, the more I feel something breaking loose in my chest. Like whatever I've been carrying finally believes I'm not going to keep carrying it alone. I don't fix it all in 1 hour, but I start, I say it, I let it out, and my daughter hears me. That counts for something. When we get home, the sun's starting to set. We don't have a table yet, so we eat takeout on the floor, Chinese food from a spot down the block. Layla puts soy sauce on everything, and we laugh when she spills it on her shirt. I spread out a blanket and light a candle just to make the space feel softer. The walls are still bare, and our voices echo a little, but it's okay. It's more than okay. I watch her eat, legs crossed, hair pulled back, and I think she looks peaceful. Not healed, but lighter. We don't talk much. Just enjoy the quiet, the food, the soft sound of the TV playing some baking show in the background. I look around and don't see brokenness. I see space, possibility. I didn't realize how loud our old home was until I sat in this silence and realized it wasn't dangerous. It was clean, free. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Court, bills, Marcus trying to twist the story. But I do know this. We're not there anymore. We're here. Before bed, I check the locks twice. Not because I'm scared, because I can, because it's mine to check. I brush my teeth in the tiny bathroom while Layla hums from the bedroom. The water pressure is weak, but I don't mind. It's our faucet now. I tuck her in even though she says she's too old. She doesn't fight it. Just lets me smooth the blanket over her and kiss her forehead. I whisper, "You're safe." She nods, doesn't even open her eyes. I walk back into my own room, small, boxy, mattress on the floor, and crawl under the covers. The room smells faintly of detergent and paint, like a blank canvas. I stare at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge in the next room. My heart still races a little. I'm still scared, of money, of court, of the next storm. But I'm not frozen. I'm not trapped. That's the difference. I turn out the light and close my eyes, knowing the only person who decides who crosses this threshold now is me. As I lie there, the quiet pressing in soft and gentle, I feel something I don't quite recognize. Not joy, not yet, but calm, strength. Like I took something back I forgot I had. The power to say no, the power to leave, the power to protect without apology. I won't pretend the damage is gone. I still smell the smoke sometimes, even if the fire's out. But the air is clearing. The noise is fading. I listen to Layla's breathing in the room beside mine, slow, steady, and I feel the smallest flicker of healing in my chest. I place my hand flat on the mattress and make a quiet promise. Just for me, I will never hand my power away again. Whatever comes next, I'll face it from here, from my own space, my own ground, my own damn key in my own damn door. And that is a beginning I can live with. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear my story. It truly means more than I can say. If you felt something while watching, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so please drop your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There are many more real stories here that might speak to your heart too. Your support helps keep this space alive and growing, and I'm deeply grateful for every single one of you. With love and respect.